one train a day, 4 steam engines, and a staff of 44 serving the line. Let's reminisce and go back to the 2nd of September, 1955.
It's 6 in the morning. Down at the station, the last of the Glenhope flyers is boosting clouds of steam up into the dark. A string of wooden trucks is marshalled at the platform. This is the only train of the day, and it's just about to go. Here comes Guard Sinclair. He's wearing a battered Stetson and swinging a kerosene lantern. What are we taking up, Gordon?
Oh, I've got groceries for different stores, beer for the Machu Picchu Hotel, manures for different farmers, milk for Glenhope, must have his daily supply, carpet for 1 or 2 of the farmers up there, and furniture.
After 80 years, Nelson had lost.
My father, Gordon McNabb Sinclair, was born in 1921. At age 15, his family lived at Glenhope, and after his marriage to my mother in 1949, he worked on the Nelson section until its closure in 1955. In the recordings that follow, my father refers to the pages of the book titled When Nelson Had a Railway by the author Barry O'Donnell and published in 2005. In 2006, at his home in Lower Hutt, I recorded my father about his reminiscences about his time on the Nelson section. This recording is made on Tuesday, the 10th of January 2006.
We would take 6 out and put them in the siding. When we went out to pick up the 6, we'd take another 6 with us. They were empties, and you'd put them in the siding, pick up the 6 that were loaded, and take them down to the port.
So what sort of length of run was that? That's only a couple of miles, is it, at the most, or?
I don't know, about 5 miles,
okay.
just over the hill.
Yeah.
You took 6 to the wharf, you had 6 loading and 6 repair in a spare, because after the first move, you took the second 6 out to the freezing works, picked up the second 6, them to the port, where they had emptied the first 6, and you just shuttled back and forward every day. That is me there, with the white shirt.
And this is page 24.
42 years of shuttle trains. That is also me there.
Right, page 25. Okay.
Unless you know.
Was there a fireman on this as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fireman and driver.
And signal and the guy down the back, or?
I don't know what he's doing there.
And was the main flow just back out to Wellington, or did the boats leave for somewhere else? Like, did they go to Auckland or New Plymouth, or?
No, they were generally small boats that took the frozen carcasses into the co-op store here in Wellington.
Okay.
And then, in those days, there wasn't any big refrigerated boats like they have now, calling into different ports. You had to amalgamate your stuff in.
Right, but the carcasses were done at what works? Out at Richmond? Stoke. And they were frozen by the time they got into the wagons?
Yeah.
So then they couldn't have been in the Nelson Yard for very long, or as soon as they came in?
Never in the Nelson Yard. You went
from
Stoke. From the Stoke.
Yeah, out to the wharf. And the boats had some sort of chilled compartments on them, did they?
Yeah.
And then they would be transshipped in Wellington into the freezers, and then loaded onto the refrigerated boats when they came in.
Yeah.
Now this thing amazed me. Where is that in relation to the road now? Is the road filled out here? Like landfill has filled all this in, hasn't it? Am I looking from the port back around to?
You're looking down from Nelson Yard to the port.
Right.
And the boulder bank is right out there. You can just see it.
Yep.
There.
But what I would see is water here. That's now land, isn't it?
Yep. That is because the tide is in there, and I can't pick up the name of that boat there. But when I went there in 1950, and about 1951 they had the dredge Abel Tasman arrive from England, and all it did, it was a sucker dredge.
So
It could lift with its shovel and put whatever it picked up in the hold. It would sail out into the bay and dump it. But they thought, well, we're only getting our own back, so we'll have to do something with it. So they converted it to a sucker, where it had a big pipe, big pump, and they gradually started from away around here and reclaimed the land. So now, of course, that's all industrial, whereas you can see there's nothing there.
And so the bottom of the harbour became the reclamation material, did
Yeah.
it? And that's how they lowered the water level in the harbour.
Yeah,
I think.
they had to dredge the harbour to...
See, now is this the creek?
That's the creek there. Used to run from here right up Vanguard Street till the bottom of the hill, and they had piped it from further up the valley to the bottom of Vanguard Street. That used to run past the station here, past the wagon shop, underneath the...
But that wasn't a dead-end line, was it? That wasn't leading out.
You can't quite see it, but that's it running down past here and out into the harbour. There were times when we got a high tide that it would bank right up in there, flood the...
Okay.
Another picture in there I'll show you later on. Used to flood the engine shop.
And that would have been seawater flooding back up the creek.
Yeah, high tides. Down there, that is double dump bales of hops or wool or whatever. As you can see, that's totally overgauged, which meant nothing.
Page 27. But they weren't too heavy for the LA wagons, they were just overgauge.
Yeah.
And you just took them down to the wharf like that,
Yeah.
and then they were picked up.
That's the hotel there at the port.
And
It's
did it have a name, or? That's okay, we can look that up. But did you have lunches there or anything?
No,
or?
no.
Okay, page 28.
I don't know
See, that
what
looks mighty busy.
that boat is, but it's one of the anchor company boats. But all that now is industrial. You wouldn't know where the line had been unless you knew it.
But there's physical buildings right over the railway line now, isn't there?
That's all filled in. You don't realise. That
There.
came into the yard, and approximately here there was a siding went off into Neil and Haddo's. That's an incoming goods train. That's about all it was. That is, if you ever get to Nelson.
Page 37, yep.
We used to come down Bishopdale Hill round the big curve, come through here, out and round to Stoke. When I was down there some time ago, the road came along and over the top of that and carried on round to the curve this side of Stoke. That used to be an overbridge. That's all done away with now. They bulldozed the whole damn thing down. From there, right up and round the Bishopdale Hill, that's all the main road. And that's how it used to be with the passenger trains going out to Richmond Racecourse.
So some of the trains never used to go all the way to Glen Hope. That wasn't an absolute ruling. They'd just come out to Richmond, go to the races, and then come back into town for more people.
Yeah, that is the freezing, the Stoke station. But that's not the freezing works. That is Stoke.
But the trains would have to come down this section of the line each day, each time?
Yeah, from Nelson here, past there, and on to Richmond, past the freezing works siding.
So that is main line. And was there a siding at Stoke for the freezing works?
No, Stoke, the freezing works had their own siding. And that's me in the white shirt again with the hat.
Page 44. Okay.
That is George Clent, the guard. That's Roy Haythorne. That's Dick Franklin.
On the drivers.
That's at Richmond. That's at Richmond Station, going out on the way to Appleby. That must have been a Monday or Wednesday. That's me there again.
Okay, page 47.
That's evidently picking up, or going out to pick up those empty wagons. That's Hope. That's just another little station from
Richmond.
This is Brightwater. Over here, you come up, stopped at Brightwater. If the line works wanted empty wagons, you would fetch them out up here, open the points, and push them back into Laurie's line works. That's the line works there.
And they were there for some time, were they?
Oh, they were there for a long time. They used to get the lime from Lee Valley, which is just over the hill.
And was that mined as a solid?
It was mined as rock, and then they had to take it back here, put it through the different grinding mills. That's an old bloke from Spring Grove.
Bit of a regular.
Oh, yeah. This is Wakefield. That was the main part of Wakefield. And in front of those horses there, that's the cattle stops on both sides. So you would come up through there and up through there and carry on up to Belgrave.
And can you remember approximately what year you started on the Nelson section?
Yeah, 1949. Mum and I were married October 1949, and then from there on we were at work.
And were you always based in either house number 1 or number 2?
No, we lived in a flat in Alton Street.
Oh, in Alton Street first, and then you went down to the yard to work, number 9 Alton Street.
Percy Dodsworth lived in number 1 house. He lived there for many, many years. He was the train examiner, general handyman round the place. When he retired, we moved in. Nobody else wanted the house, so they gave it to us. Then when Jimmy Coombs retired, he was before Jimmy, in the number 2 house, Chappie Hadfield lived. He was the bridge carpenter, general maintenance bridges. He was in charge of the work gang. When he retired, Jimmy Coombs was appointed. He moved in number 2 house, lived alongside us. Then when he retired, he moved to Blenheim. I asked him if I could move in there. Nobody else wanted the house, so they said, yeah, go ahead. So Mum and I moved in there. And we moved from there up to Pyco. This is going back to the time when that train would leave Belgrave, pick up the kids and take them into town.
And that's for the start of school, is it? In the mornings?
Yeah, the morning start school.
Yep, page 70, yep.
At the same time, a train on Monday and Wednesday would leave Nelson to go to Glenhope and back.
And what did they do to get back from school in the afternoon?
The train. At Belgrave at that time there was an engine shed and 3 houses which were for the loco staff. The loco staff was based at Nelson, and the loco staff was based at Belgrave to do the early morning train. Now that one is the kids' train going into Nelson with the kids. That one is the train heading for Glenhope. That was one of the carriages for the kids. That is Roy Haythorne's ticket for going to college. Now that is coming up the big round curve, and Bishopdale is just up here.
So you've already come through that overpass.
It comes up from the overpass, come up and round. The main road also
sort of followed that, did it?
Up over the hill, came in from Richmond, Stoke, up over the hill, and the road followed up round there to Bishopdale and down in town. That is Frank Rodden,
page 80.
Who was a labourer for Albie Reid, the carpenter. And they used to repair the wagons or the carriages or whatever. That is the big store that was over.
So we're looking from the port down the Nelson Yard here?
Yep. Well, I would say
but
it
this
was
is
taken
the port
from the
end
end of the platform, and that store is where Mum and I used to get our groceries and such like.
And they sold generally everything?
Oh yeah. That's the bridge that the train, there it is. I don't know what it's doing looking uphill. That would be right. I'm not sure what that engine was doing, but it's heading uphill from Belgrave, up Spooner's Range. That's that bridge and that one is the same bridge.
Yep. Page 83.
Now that's going up Spooner's to Spooner's Tunnel.
Would it slip there in the winter, or?
Oh yes. That is Machu Picchu.
So was that the first destination outside of the tunnel?
Yeah. You came down off Spooner's Tunnel, and you, about a couple of 100 yards from Spooner's Tunnel heading to Machu Picchu, you run over the main road. And then you followed the main road along, and I think you crossed it twice. And the final crossing was on the Nelson side of the Machu Picchu Yard. Run along, across the Machu Picchu Yard, and then carried on down past the pub. So Kohatu and Machu Picchu are the same place. Yeah, that's the water tank at Machu Picchu. as you can see, the pine trees
Just still there.
That was the big tank that you used heading to Glen Hope. If you wanted water heading back up Spooners, you had to stop at the small tank on the far end of the yard. You can't see it there, but there's a tank round there by those trees which you could get water from. Instead of stopping at this one homeward bound, they put in that tank.
But is that just filled by rainwater?
Yep. Now, what you've got to realise, that the engine was the only thing that had Westinghouse brakes.
Oh, the wagons didn't?
No, none of the carriages or vans or anything had Westinghouse brakes. So you can imagine coming into Machu Picchu, you might not pull up in time to get that tank. So there was that one there. You could pull forward and get the water for the trip up the hill. The only place Mararee was known for, that's the Upper Valley Cemetery. You can see the tombstones in the back.
So this was once you got south of Machu Picchu?
Yep.
And is that known by any other name today?
No. Machu Picchu, Tapawera, Mararewa. I have no idea why they put a bloody station there. It hadn't a loop or anything to pick up anything. Tapawera, you see photographs there from the train returning from Glen Hope. We didn't have a turntable to turn the engines round.
So you were literally pushing all the way back to Nelson?
You went forward to Glen Hope, in reverse to Nelson. So you always had the coal bunker blowing bloody dust and everything into the cab on the way back.
But is that pushing the wagons?
No, it's pulling.
Oh, it's pulling the wagons.
That's the Tapawera
Page 99. Yep.
combined
Road and rail bridge.
Yep, there it is there.
And is the road portion of that in existence today? Does the road follow the same formation?
The bridge is still there, only they had to redeck it after they took the rails off. That's just another one of the protest trains. Rakau Station, that's where I picked up the two Hodgkinson's kids. When I ran the last train, we didn't have put a carriage on from Glen Hope because we knew there'd be no passengers. When I got to Rakau, the two Hodgkinson's kids were waiting there. So I told her, didn't she realise this was the last train, passenger train on the section? If the kids wanted to come, they were welcome to sit in the van with me. But I said, you make arrangements with Wadsworth Motors to get those kids back from Nelson because there will be no trains running. So that's what she did.
And were they service cars?
Yeah, he ran a daily service from Tapawera into Nelson.
And so could bring the kids back the other way.
Yeah, so he fetched them back as far as Tapawera, and she had to travel by car from Rakau into Tapawera, a matter of 4 or 5 kilometres. That's the Tadmore station. Because of its size, the post office was in this end of the station. One morning it burnt down, and that's her sitting out, that's Tadmore station there. It burnt down, so what Jimmy Coombs' gang did was went to Kiwi station, cut it in half, and fetched half a Kiwi station down to Tadmore. But at the same time as what it burnt down, they moved the telegraph section out of the station and put it over with the shop. We used to fetch raspberries in from we had raspberry growers at Tapawera, Tadmore, Rakau, Kiwi and Tui. So when the train was running from you'd leave in the morning to go to Glen Hope, and you had to stop at those stations to put off empty barrels. A raspberry barrel was about that high and about that round. And the pickers used to pick the raspberries, take it up to whoever was running the place, and he would weigh it, and then he would tip the bin into one of the barrels. When the barrel was full, you would, the year I worked on the farm, when it left Kirk's to be taken up, the top rim of the barrel was left loose. When the growers filled it up, they would put a piece of scrim over the top, put the rim back in the place and hit it down with a hammer to keep the scrim in place.
Yep.
But during the picking season, we stopped at various places and picked up barrels of raspberries, and then with the shuffle them going on, the raspberries would form the juice, which used to ferment, and the juice would ease up over through the scrim and run down the barrel. And the van floor, by the time we got back to Nelson, was red with juice. When we had to put the van in a position that Kirk's would come over and back the lorries in and take the barrels over to Kirk's, which was not much more than the length of the street here, on Cambridge Street, I think it was called, and they would get them, they'd tip them into the vats and boil them and make jam. Other days, that's Kirk's lorry there, and when the
Page 109,
when the refrigerated vans weren't being used at the freezing work, we used to allow Kirk to load their jam into those, and then we'd run them down the port. That's one of the little F wagons. I don't know whether that's the one that we tipped over in the ballast pit, but they had 4 of them there, little F engines that used to run up to Glenhope until they were replaced with the WF. Now, Corcor Station, you see the siding there at Corcor.
Page 114.
Now, up past there, the Corcor Lime Works was way up country here, and they used to bag the lime and run it down by a wagon that used to run alongside this one here, and they would load from the truck into a railway truck, and then we would pick it up in the afternoon and take it wherever it was required. That's Keith Polgroves. Of a Friday morning when we run the Friday train
to Nelson from Glenhope,
there's a truck loading lime into railway wagons. Mrs. Polgroves often used to come down and go shopping in Nelson. When we came down the Hope Saddle, you had to be very careful that you were slow enough going into the Corcor yard. She would stand out in front of the station so we could see her from 300 or 400 yards away, and I would be on the watch out when I was on the Friday morning train that I had the brake well screwed down in the van that we could pull up within the Corcor yard and get her into the carriage. She was about the only one that ever transferred down from Corcor. That's Glenhope.
Page 118.
The station is still there. It's owned by, I don't know whether Jim Pettigrew is still there, but up around the corner here was Newton McConaughey's place. He owned the farm all round there. That place there is the boiler house. When we shifted to Glenhope, the chappie there told them that every Thursday a man was to be allocated to heat the foot warmers. Because there was no steam from the engine to the van, to the carriage, they had these foot warmers. Now, a foot warmer was something shaped like that, about 2 foot 6 long, made of copper and filled with a special type of soda ash. And there was only about 12 of them that you put in the carriage for Friday run into town. Now, Dad had to allocate a man who would, unfortunately it doesn't show a picture in here, of the boiler. A boiler was just an overgrown copper. If you could imagine that being divided off, he would gather the heaters out of the carriage and put them end on into the water, and then he would start the fire going, and he would spend the day stoking it. If he wanted more coal, he would go down to the engine shed, which was just down here, and get a wheelbarrow of coal, and he would spend his days sitting there stoking the fire.
And how long would they remain hot for? The return trip, do you think? Or?
Yeah, when the train was ready to leave Nelson, they would go along and they'd pick these long things up and give them a good shake from each end. They had a hand grip on each end and give them a shake, and they maintained the heat all Friday until the train got to Glenhope at 10 o'clock on Friday night. That's the house we lived in at Glenhope. There was the station master's house here,
page 118,
one here, and one just next door. The main road came over the Hope Saddle, down there, over the Hope Bridge, and then along Glenhope.
And how old were you at this time?
Well, I must have been round about 16, because I left school in Cheviot. I was 15 in the February, but I didn't go back to school, so I was 14, 10 months or something.
And you'd moved up to Glenhope at that stage?
Yeah. Now, this is one of Mum's photographs.
Page 121. These are elephants in the Glenhope.
That's the Glenhope school. So Woolworths showed for a fortnight in Nelson, and then they loaded everything up on the way to Greymouth. So they called in to the Glenhope yard for dinner. So they unloaded the elephants to give them a break, and that was the end of Glenhope yard. Now, when you arrived at Glenhope, you stopped 200 or 300 yards from the Glenhope yard, and then you went down and unlocked the points at Glenhope, walked back up, got on the engine and got him moving, and then you'd cut him off and let him run down the main line, and you lifted the points lever and the train ran from the main line down into Glenhope yard. That's the only way we could turn them round.